Hey everyone, I want to talk to you in this video about the Miss Rule and how it applies to club amateur snooker level. I want to talk you through what I think are the pros and cons of using it at club amateur level. And remember, these are just my opinions. You may not agree with them, and that's absolutely fine. The right choice for you as to whether you use it depends on your skill level and actually what level you play at in the amateur game. I also want to talk to you about some adaptations to the Miss Rule I have seen or heard about being used at the club amateur level, which you might want to give a try to. Be sure to watch the whole video to learn more and share your thoughts in the comments about whether the Miss Rule should or should not be used at the club amateur level. Firstly, for those who don't know, let's have a look at what the Miss Rule actually is. Now let's take a look at the WPBSA website, which has a full rulebook available for free to download or to view on the website. I'll leave a link in the description if Googling isn't for you. So paragraph 21 in the definitions section states a miss is A, when the cue ball fails to contact a ball on, or B, when a free ball has been nominated, the cue ball fails to first hit the nominated free ball or that ball simultaneously with the ball on. However, I actually feel there's a bit of a contradiction here, because Rule 14 of the main rules section states that a miss is called only after a foul where the offending player fails to hit the ball on to the best of their abilities. We'll talk a bit more about the best of their abilities later on in this video. But for now, though, let's keep reading. Only when a miss is called, the following player can request that all balls are returned to their original positions before the foul stroke was played, and the offending player is required to play again and attempt to make a legal shot to the best of their ability. A miss cannot be called if either player requires penalty points to close the gap and win, including the points available from potting, aka the snooker requires stage, before or after the foul stroke. Interestingly, a miss can also not be called if the referee deems there is no possible way of making a legal shot to hit the ball on. Basically, the situation of an impossible snooker. I don't think I've ever seen this situation arrive in a televised game, but let me know in the comments if you can think of an example, and I'd be interested to see how it's dealt with by the referee. If after a miss is called, the following player requests the balls to be returned to their original positions, a consultation period begins. This is a fancy term for the referee or referees, if it's a professional game and there's like a marker with access to the television footage, and the players can consult with each other as to where the original positions of the balls are. Once both players agree where the original positions are, then that agreement cannot be withdrawn. The player cannot agree, for example, and then get down on the shot and then decide that actually it's in the wrong place. Okay, let's get into the pros and cons of using the Miss Rule at the club amateur level. I emphasize the club amateur level because I think some of these don't apply to the higher echelons of the game, where I still think the Miss Rule is the better option than not having it. So we've already taken a look at the official rulebook from the WPBSA, and as you can see, the Miss Rule is right there in black and white. What I'm saying is, if it's there in black and white, we should be using it. It doesn't say, for example, this Miss Rule should only be used if you have a referee, or if there's prize money or ranking points available. And for some, the fact that it's in the official rulebook is enough that it should be used at all times. So why then do so many clubs and amateur leagues, particularly inter-club leagues, just not use it? Or perhaps use a altered version, or dare I say, watered down version of the Miss Rule? Well, one reason might be that it seems to me that the enforcement of the Miss Rule is very, very heavily reliant on the use of an independent referee, because it requires a great deal of subjective interpretation about the situation of the game and the circumstances leading up to the miss being called. The referee has a key role to play in deciding whether the fouling player has tried to hit the ball to the best of their abilities. Very rarely at the grassroots amateur level of the game is a specialist referee used. More often than not, it's the non-playing player's responsibility to referee that particular shot, or at best it might be another player in the club that is providing the referee. Either way, you'd like to think there would be impartiality, but it's obviously not going to always be the case, especially if a league match or a cup match is at stake. This is especially the case when trying to decide the whole best of their abilities conundrum. It's very difficult for an amateur player to decide whether that player has made the best possible attempt to hit the ball. And because of the lack of referee, the Miss Rule seems to be intermittently applied by those people or clubs that do apply it. Because, for example, if somebody fouls and spreads the balls around, then the player who's been impacted by the foul may decide that they don't want the balls to be returned because it's just too difficult to put the balls back to where they were. But on the other side of the fence, you could argue that the best way to learn to escape from snookers is repetitive practice, the same as potting, and in particular to make minor adjustments to the line or the pace or the spin to try and make a successful escape. Sure, you can practice this in solo practice, but if you're time starved and only have a few hours a week to play snooker, which you'd rather be playing matches than solo practice, then without the miss rule, you're not going to have the opportunity to repeat a shot unless you just do it at the end and set the balls up again yourself. The miss rule does at least give you that opportunity. If you miss the ball and a miss is called, the balls are returned, hopefully to the correct place, but not always, because very rarely is there video footage to use, and very rarely, as we've already discussed, there is an independent referee. But at least you get the opportunity to at least try the shot again, make a minor adjustment, and hopefully get out of the snooker. But the miss rule can also cause players to turn down chances when perhaps the pot is the better option. In my opinion, there should never be a situation where a player turns down, say, a 60-40 pot chance in favour of laying a snooker because they think there's a possibility of getting umpteen points from the miss rule. Let's say, for example, you pot a red and you wind up on a high half ball blue to get back down on the reds, but also there is an easy opportunity to snooker your opponent by coming off the green and nestling in behind the brown. Now, sure, the half ball blue is a tricky shot, and there's a risk if you miss it, you're probably going to be leaving your opponent with a pot. And you could even argue that without the miss rule, people might still choose to play the snooker. But that's fine because there's only ever going to be a maximum of 7 points given away. Because the worst that's going to happen is the player hits or pots the black in trying to escape legitimately. And the player laying the snooker is still required to have some level of potting prowess to win the match because of that. I realise this one might be a bit of sour grapes on my part because I've had a few matches recently where late snookers have cost me because escaping from snookers is still below par compared to the rest of my abilities at snooker. That said, it can be really demoralising to lay a really good snooker but only get 4 points for it because your opponent has failed to escape but left the balls safe. Okay, there's always the option to ask your opponent to play again from where the ball's finished, but even when the balls are safe, there's always a risk that your opponent can play an even better safety shot, or pot, or fluke something. At least with the miss rule, there'd always be the option to put the balls back. Okay, if you put the balls back, they may be successful in escaping from the snooker and still leave it safe, or pot a ball, or snook you back. But in those cases, you tap your chalk on the table and just say good shot. It also reduces the possibility of a deliberate, okay, let's say semi-deliberate foul. Perhaps the snookered player decides to play a unorthodox escape route, perhaps off 2 or 3 cushions instead of a straight 1 cushion escape, because it offers the best chance of not leaving a pot on, whether they're successful or not in the escape, particularly if they're not successful. I wouldn't say that's a deliberate foul, that's why I use semi-deliberate, but you could certainly argue it's definitely not playing the shot to the best of their abilities. However, the counter-argument to that is it could excessively reward a fluke snooker or perhaps a snooker played after a fluked pot. I would even go as far as to argue that these situations are perhaps more common in the grassroots amateur level than a legitimately played snooker, especially in the non-snooker required stage. Okay, in the snooker required stage, your opponent or whoever requires a snooker is going to go for snookers, and chances are eventually they are going to get one. But in the non-snookered required stage, I would argue that most people would try and play a pot than go for a snooker. I would go as far as to argue that these cases are actually more common than the legitimately played for snooker in the non-snookered required stage in the club amateur game. Frames at this level tend to be closer affairs and go deep into the colours with either player being able to win. And okay, you may get a situation where there's not a pot on, so your opponent or yourself plays a safety shot to try and stop your opponent getting a pot. And there's always a chance that a ball could roll behind the black or whatever balls are left and block the on ball, but I would argue that very rarely do players actually play a snooker in these situations. They're just trying to play and leave the object ball safe. But this is probably where most snookers occur and can do the most damage, especially if the miss rule is used. Anyway, that's enough about pros and cons. Before we get into the adaptations you may want to try with the Miss Rule, please do like the video by clicking the thumbs up button just down below. And also, if you're watching this video this far without being subscribed, chances are you will like more stuff that I'm doing, so why not consider subscribing to the channel? As I say in every video at the moment, I'm on a push to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2023. Got about 175 to go, so you could really do me a favour by clicking that subscribe button. It doesn't cost anything, and you never know, you might actually enjoy some of the other stuff that I put out. So here are a couple of adaptations I've heard of you being used at the club amateur level of the game, and you may want to give them a try at your club. You never know, they might actually work for you. One option is to use the 6 reds rule of the Miss Rule and limit the amount of misses that can be applied for any given foul. I think in 6 reds it's 5 misses, so you might want to limit it to 5, or you might want to limit it to say 3 misses, depending on what level you are. So this has the advantage of that you do get the chance to tweak your line or your pace to try and make a successful escape, and you're unlikely to give away enough points to reach the Snookers required stage and lose the frame because of it. However, let's say you play 3 misses, that still means that a snooker could be worth 28 points if 4 fouls are conducted and they involve the black. 28 points doesn't sound a lot, but I would warrant that it's above most people's average break at the club amateur level. The other adaptation I've seen used is to have a set distance away from the object ball the cue ball has to be before it's considered a miss. For example, this would in most cases remove the subjectiveness of the best of their abilities call, especially if there's only one ball on. However, let's say you set a rule where the player trying to escape had to get within 1 ball width of the object ball or the ball on to escape, otherwise it's called a miss. That's fine if it's only 1 ball on, but what if you had 4 or 5 reds left or more and the player attempts to hit a particular red, perhaps tries to hit one on a cushion, but misses that by quite a way, perhaps comes off the jaw of the middle pocket back towards another red and ends up within a ball width? Would you consider that a miss? It's very unlikely, but it could occur. I should say that I don't use the miss rule in any of the matches that I play, be it friendlies or be it as part of the internal club league that I help organise. Nor does the Shrewsbury Interclub Town League use the miss rule. It's obviously free choice, and I would certainly not refuse to play somebody who wanted to use the miss rule. Luckily, I film quite a lot of my frames, even though you don't always get to see them, so it's very likely there would be footage for me to refer to if there was a debate, let's say, in the consultation period about where the balls would be replaced. But I'd like to think I'd never have to use that, because whoever I'm playing, I think I would like to reach a compromise. I would love to know your thoughts on the miss rule. I've seen a lot of discussion about it on various snooker groups on Facebook and on comments on YouTube, including myself pitching in occasionally. Also, if you're struggling to escape from snookers, as I was and continue to, whether or not you play the miss rule, why not check out my snooker escape practice routine that I devised? I'll leave a card here that you can click on and have a go at that when you're next in the club. In the meantime though, that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed this more essay style video. Let me know in the comments if there are more snooker controversial subjects you'd like me to address in this sort of format, and I will see you in whatever the next video turns out to be.